Alan Watts was an amazing storyteller and a wordsmith, and just an overall really likable character. I'm a very big fan of his. He has done, or he did, as much as anyone to spread Eastern philosophy, and especially Zen philosophy and Daoism in the West. And yet, I think he got a couple of things very badly wrong, probably due to the culture at the time or the way he was informed about certain things, which I think have had a rather negative effect in the way we see self-cultivation, and perhaps they also had some kind of effect in his personal life, which, as you may or may not know, was very badly disturbed by alcoholism, which eventually took his life. And so I want to go into these things and do a bit of a critique of a couple of them. This channel is Meditation Amsterdam. My name is Pablo, and today we get to do a little bit of a critique on Alan Watts. So I want to start with Alan's notion of the fact that you can't really catch the ego no matter what you do. This is highly related to the topic that I was dealing with yesterday, in which I use actually a Watts analogy, which is, can you actually outsmart the devil? And I will attempt to do so by criticizing an analogy that Alan Watts uses, in which he equates trying to outsmart or catch the ego as a building in which there's a bunch of bandits on the ground floor, and when the police comes in, the bandits climb to the first floor. So in this analogy, the bandits are arguably the ego, and the police coming in is your awareness trying to catch that ego through meditation, sadhana, or some such cultivation practices. So the story that Alan Watts tells is that when the police comes into the ground floor, the robbers go to the second floor. So you can't really catch them. Awareness cannot catch the ego, or your practices cannot catch the ego. And when the police come to the second floor, then the robbers climb to the third floor. When the police go to the third floor, the robbers climb to the fourth floor, and so on. And the story ends with the robbers sort of going out the roof. So you never really catch the ego. Now, I want to give the story a little bit of credit, or I want to give that analogy a bit of credit in saying that it is true to say that the ego is not an entity which can be caught. You won't find it, strictly speaking, as the entity that it presents itself to be at face value. And so awareness can't really ever catch the ego in the way that you think you'll catch it, as a thing that has become reified. The ego, or the egoic mode of the mind, is a series of mental processes and memories and object relations, as I've described in previous videos. So you cannot trap it as such. However, there is a real danger in this analogy, in that Alan Watts never gives any credit to the exercise of looking and observation and what is gained from that, at least not in that analogy. And I want to go into that because there is a value in looking. You see, before, through practices, you go into the first floor of that building, your awareness is completely hijacked by the ego, and you're just an automaton. You are totally not self-aware. But as you come into the building, already there's a little degree of awareness to be able to do that, even if you don't find anything there. And as you go into the second floor looking for the ego, there's effort involved in that. And there is a refinement of your awareness. There's a refinement of your powers of observation, self-observation. And you need to become more nuanced, more focused, more equanimous to be able to get to that second level of the building. And the same goes for every level thereafter. So that in climbing through the building of the self, looking for the ego, your awareness over time becomes cultivated. That's the very definition of what cultivation is, which is to refine and solidify your awareness and to use it to colonize the building of your psychosomatics, your mind and your body. And maybe you will never find the ego in the way that you thought you would. It goes out through the roof like a bandit in Alan Watts' analogy. But in the process of looking for it, your awareness has become very, very strong, and you have colonized with that awareness the entire edifice of your psychosomatics, which would have otherwise remained in your subconscious. So that in colonizing the building and going floor by floor, checking to see if the ego is there and trying to find it, you essentially map out your entire subconscious, or at least a very big part of it. And in doing that, you become more equanimous, more self-regulated, and you become less identified with what you thought was yourself. So that eventually when you get to the roof, you didn't find the ego, but your entire identity has shifted away from thinking that you were the ego and realizing that you were pure awareness instead. So there's a real value in doing this. This should not be minimized. The fact that the ego doesn't exist as an entity, and the fact that you can never sort of catch hold of it in the way that you think you can when you, as the police, go into the building looking for the robbers, doesn't preclude the practice from having enormous value in your life and from essentially changing you from the inside out by the very exercise of looking for that which doesn't really exist. The other thing that Watts tends to do, which I don't agree with, is he really minimizes the value of sadhana. He believes that you're already the works, as he would call it. You are already pure awareness. You are already the entire universe looking at itself. And so when it says, well, when you start to meditate, what is it that you're trying to fix? Why do you want to fix yourself? Right? In other words, you are in an egoic trap of trying to improve yourself when the very self that is trying to improve itself is a false self. And once again, there's some credit to what he says, because that's the spiritual ego trap, or that is the trap of wanting enlightenment, right? Desire. Having become very refined and very spiritual, but remaining fully egoic and fully the activity of desire nonetheless, and therefore not allowing you to sink into the now and simply being what you are. However, this is one of the points that I really try to emphasize in this channel, which is that it doesn't matter whether your efforts are originally egoic. They will be egoic by definition, because that's the identity that you're coming from when you start your self-cultivation journey. I've received, based on my previous video, quite a few comments saying like, but isn't that the trap? Of course, if the ego cannot be caught, then should you try to do anything about it, or just leave everything as it is? And this is an age-old question. This is an age-old spiritual question of, should you be doing anything at all? Is it not about doing nothing because you're already it? Or should you be making effort knowing that that effort is egoic and it has desire at its base? I would submit to you that this is a red herring. Of course it's going to be egoic. You don't really have much of a choice there. And if you sit around and do nothing, you'll go to your grave without any degree of realization, like the great masses of people do. Because if you do nothing, then your neurophysiology doesn't change. It only changes based on life experience, which is a very slow teacher. Whereas skillful means, the practice of cultivation techniques, is nothing but an accelerated maturation. It's an acceleration of the maturation process that you undergo through life. And it's putting life on wheels, so to speak, so that you can experience more, suffer more in some sense, but also metabolize more and do it faster and more efficiently than if you just leave it to chance. So that your real choice is not between doing nothing because you're already it, even though you can't feel it, or doing something and then therefore getting caught in an egoic pursuit. Your pursuit will be egoic for a while, but the question really is, are you using skillful means to disentangle yourself from egoic structures or not? And I don't think Alan Watts went far enough in clarifying that. I think he really subscribed to the idea of doing nothing. And if you ask me, I think he paid a very heavy price for it. He subscribed to the live and let live, nothing is worth doing philosophy, where in reality, cultivating your psychosomatics, cultivating your self-regulation, cultivating your parasympathetic responses, the way in which you breathe, the way in which you can resolve trauma, all of that has real value to your life. You could argue that it's egoic, that's fine, but it will help live a better life. The quality of life that you can live will simply be better if you clean out your trauma. I think it's very difficult to argue with that. And then if you take that far enough, and I've made some videos about this as well, if you clear trauma and mental hang-ups and mental filters and you simply keep going with the process, it eventually results in a shift in your identity away from an ego-centered identity and towards an awareness-centered identity in which your egoic self is but one of the many things that you perceive within your awareness. So essentially there you have it. In summary, I think Alan Watts was phenomenal. I don't want this to be some kind of put down of Alan Watts. I think he was, as I said, a great wordsmith and a great storyteller, and he knew a lot about Taoism and Zen, but I think that he seriously undervalued the power of sadhana to, first of all, simply improve your life, and secondly, he never really subscribed to the idea that enlightenment and self-realization are a psychosomatic endeavor. And because of that, you might have bought into this idea that anything you do, it's either worthless or is not worth doing because you're already it, even though you can't really feel it. Very curious what you have to say about this one. So, if you have any thoughts or questions about the matter, do leave them in the comment section. And as usual, if you think that this is valuable content, then your commenting, liking, and subscribing to the channel makes it far more available to others who might benefit from it. And it's also very motivating to myself. And as usual, I'll be back with more videos pretty soon. So thanks for listening. Cheerio and bye-bye.